So we're joined from the beautiful Miami, Florida, by my friend Guyliana Plantain, attorney in entertainment and music with the Delgado Law Firm. We thank you so much for taking some time for us today. This is our college and career readiness class here at Velma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central, Ridgeland High School, my good friend and former paralegal April Majors over there, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. We are in the law career cluster. So we thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out to have me here. So yeah, I'm here to be a vessel of knowledge and help in any way that I can.
Awesome. Well, we obviously want to talk about the ups and downs of a legal career. But first, just give us a little background. You are originally from Florida, went to the University of Florida. This is Bulldog and Rebel territory here in the SEC, but we'll let a Florida Gator make it today. And then you went to law school at FAMU there in Tallahassee, great HBCU. So just tell us about that educational background and that kind of combination of PWI with the HBCU because they both offer so many great things that can really give you a great, well-rounded education.
For sure, for sure. So yeah, as you can see, I'm a Florida girl through and through. I grew up in Miami. I went to John A. Ferguson Senior High School. It's a pretty new high school, so either you heard of it or you probably didn't. But I did play sports while I was in high school. I was in track and field. I was in cheerleading, and I was in dance as well. Then I went over to the University of Florida and I majored in criminology back when I thought I was going to be a criminal defense attorney. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then I took a break in between undergrad and law school. I took 3 years off so that I could get some real world experience, go out there and work a little bit, save some money. And then I applied for FAMU College of Law. Most people think that FAMU College of Law is in Tallahassee because that's where the main campus is, but
Oh,
FAMU
really?
College of Law is actually in Orlando. Yes.
I did
Um,
not know that. Wow. Okay.
yeah, and kind of the history behind that is that, well, FSU didn't really want the FAMU Law School in Tallahassee, so they pushed our campus over to Orlando, unfortunately. But it all worked out for the best. I graduated in 2022, and I took the Florida bar, and then a year later, I took the New York bar. I passed that. I haven't waived in just yet. I'm still kind of dragging my feet on that character and fitness portion. There's a whole background check. It takes a couple months. So, but I am also barred in Arizona as well. So, and here I am. I'm working at Delgado Entertainment Law. We are a remote boutique firm and we specialize in all things entertainment.
That's incredible. And I'm glad you mentioned about, you said you wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. And so
Mhm,
many kids tell me they want to be an attorney. And that's great because we need more good attorneys. There's no doubt. But
mhm.
I think the biggest misconception about the legal field is that it's not just what you see on TV. We all watch Law and Order. I was a big fan of the show All Rise. The courtroom dramas, they make for great TV, but that is such a minuscule part of the actual legal field. And obviously, yeah, we still need some people to work on the criminal side, but there are so many other areas that attorneys touch. And I know so many attorneys that never step foot in a courtroom. Another friend of a friend of mine that used to be the general counsel for the Mississippi Supreme Court here in Jackson said she went to court maybe once every 3 or 4 years. So it really is very, very diverse. All types of people can. You're completely remote. If somebody wants to have kids, it can be great to have a family to build around your schedule. So it really all depends on what you want and who you want to serve.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, we can thank the pandemic for the whole remote thing, because being a remote attorney was non-existent before. This was not a thing. There were no online Zoom hearings. Everybody had to appear in court or, appear in person for depositions. You had to show up. Okay, so I will say this is a new age for online lawyering, but it's here to stay, fortunately, because it is convenient. It does save everybody time and money. So. Yeah, it's a good thing. But as going back to your point about wanting to be a criminal defense attorney, I think that's what everybody sees. That's the most common thing, right? Everybody watches Law and Order, and it's exciting, right? Crime going on, you want to solve the mystery, you want to prove somebody did it. I get that, but there are so many other practices and fields in this space that you can explore that are just as fulfilling, if not more exciting as well. And entertainment is definitely one of those. And as we'll learn about a little bit later for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to talk about is with entertainment law, you have a lot of intellectual property. You have a lot of copyright issues. You have the way people get paid. You have deals with the venues. You have deals with record labels. You have deals with you know, the name, image, and likeness. I know that's big in sports, but that's also very big in entertainment as well. So, talk
Mhm.
about some of the things that an entertainment and music attorney would handle because it is a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but it's a lot of very important stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So, first things first, there's actually no such thing as entertainment law. What makes it entertainment is the clients itself, right? So, but the actual practice of it is a bunch of different kinds of practices. So, it's like you said, copyright law, trademark law, intellectual property, patents, breach of contract, just regular civil, transactional, or litigation matters. But again, what makes it entertainment is the actual clientele itself, because there's different fields, right? So in summary, there are different things that you can do in the entertainment space. I have plenty of people who are entertainment lawyers, but they are also criminal defense lawyers because their entertainment clients need criminal help. There are oftentimes rappers they get into some things sometimes, but they need a criminal defense lawyer on their side. But that's still the entertainment lawyer, right? Because again, their clients are in the entertainment space. So, remind me of the second half of your question again.
It was just, you know, there's so many things in the background in the entertainment industry that require an attorney to look at.
Got it.
There's so
Yeah,
much, and even more now than ever. If somebody wants to be in a commercial, they got to make sure somebody's getting paid right, and you know their image is
right.
going to be on that product. They've got to have a good contract on that. If somebody's going to, you know, there's deals with the venues, there's deals with promoters, and you know the big thing in the music industry is the runners. That is a legally binding contract. For them to show up, all these things have to be done. So it's important that somebody behind the scenes makes sure everybody's taken care of fairly and equitably.
Yeah, and then going back to your point, you asked me what exactly a music lawyer is responsible for. That could be a wide range of things depending on who you're representing, right? Whether you're on the talent side or if you're on the company side. If you're on the talent side, meaning you represent independent artists, musicians, entrepreneurs, whoever, you are mostly trying to get ahead of the issues before they arise, right? And that means setting up your contracts before you collaborate with people or make songs with people, or even just get into business with them. That could also look like clearing samples. If your music wants to be used somewhere else, either part of a movie, a TV, a film, whatever it is. It could also look like helping with deals, closing deals that you're having, whether it's an influencer deal, brand deals, marketing campaigns, things of that nature. So it's really everything all behind the scenes that we're kind of responsible for as far as making sure everything is on the up and up and that everybody has permission to do what they are doing. There's a lot of particular rights under copyright law, right? And if those aren't taken care of first, then things can get really expensive later with lawsuits and all of the things. So, yeah, that's kind of where we start. And if you're on the other side, if you're working with, large companies like Sony, VH1, if you're working in like their legal affairs departments, you're also taking care of a lot of logistics as far as, clearing samples on both sides, like I said, and making sure people who are on TV or, performing live, they have the rights to be there. We have permission to use their music. We have permission to disseminate their music amongst other people. So there are lots of rights that need to be protected in the music space, and that's pretty much what we do. We make sure that your rights are protected and we have the right to exploit them for a certain amount of time, for a certain period in certain spaces.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, because, you know, again, I have so many kids, and I know I can speak for the other teachers as well, that have kids say they want to be attorneys because they think it's just a ton of money and it's a high profile, high status job, but there is so much work involved. You are reading through paper after paper after paper. You've got to be the legal expert. State to state laws are different. We all know a lot of the federal laws, but state to state laws can vary, and you've got to be the expert on that. And if not, it costs people a lot of money. So talk about the things that an attorney has to be good at because if somebody doesn't like reading, they probably don't need to be an attorney. Just talk about some of the skills an attorney needs to be effective.
Yeah, for sure. Well, of course, reading is one of them, right? And it's not so much of like when I say you have to like reading. I'm not saying you have to be excited about it. I'm not saying that you have to be over the moon about it. But when it comes to reading, you have to be able to sit down and focus on a piece of literature or material for extended periods of time. And that's what we mean by, you have to either enjoy or be able to at least tolerate being able to sit still for that long and focus on something for an extended period of time, right? Because there are so many details, so much information that you're learning in that setting that yeah, you need to be able to focus there. So I would definitely say reading. If you hate it now, then maybe go learn some math, because that is just as valuable as being able to read, and it'll take you just as far as reading will. Being able to problem solve and think outside of the box. Obviously we all can't be Olivia Pope of Scandal, right? But putting pieces together, asking questions. I personally, when I was in high school, I don't feel like I asked enough questions. There are no such thing as stupid questions. And even if there are, who cares, right? You will do much better having the information that you need than just passing, just continuing on not knowing and forgoing asking that information because you're afraid to look stupid. So be inquisitive, be curious, ask questions if you don't understand something. Um, what else do we have here? So I said reading, asking questions, being inquisitive, um, having good people skills. This is a
There you go.
relationship based career, no matter what anybody says, right? You think
Big time.
everything has to do with the courtroom? No, this is a relationship based career. That means you need to be able to know how to talk to people, how to be friends with people, how to empathize with people when they are at their darkest times, because that is often where we meet them at, right? They either meet us when it's too late, or if they're good about it, then they meet us before that. But you need to know how to build connections with people so that they can build trust in you. Um, one of the ways that we become successful in this career is by having people confide in us and trust in us to handle their affairs. Because you're either fighting for their life or we're fighting for their money. And both of those things are equally important. So people need to be able to trust you. So yeah, I would say relationship building, being a people person, being good at reading and problem solving for sure.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because I feel like I'm kicking a dead horse when I talk about the importance of being able to speak. You got to speak to people that are not an expert about things you are an expert on. So you have to explain things to people. And I'm glad you talked about the relationship aspect of it because in your field, people aren't trying to stay out of jail, but you really can have a huge hand in people creating generational wealth and creating a name for themselves. People having folks having that copyright for the first time, folks having that um, uh, first big payday. And then, a lot of attorneys deal with people buying a house. So you really have a
Mhm.
tangible reward that you see, and you're not ever dealing with the ugly side of um, of law. Now, also, I did want to talk about briefly, just because we're talking about the career field, the need for paralegals, because
Oh yeah.
it is something that even in the virtual world and with these virtual firms, there's always other people that, if because I hate to say, well, this would be fun, but I don't know if I want to go to law school. There's a lot of great college programs that have paralegals, and they have a huge hand in assisting these law firms.
hmm For sure. Paralegals are instrumental in the success of attorneys, right? They go hand in hand. If you have an amazing paralegal, your job as an attorney can be so much easier. If you have a bad paralegal, your job as an attorney can be a nightmare. And law school, truthfully, is not for everybody, right? There are people who love to do that kind of work, but don't necessarily want to go through an extra 3 years of school or go through, the ruling test and all of that. And I completely understand that. As somebody who's been through that, I get it. Okay, but like you said, a next best alternative is getting a paralegal certificate at another institution, because you can still be in that field and still do that kind of work and still be just as instrumental to the success of the attorneys that you may admire in that field. I was a legal assistant before I was an attorney, and I loved that work, right? Because one of the main reasons I loved it is because I still got to be a part of that world, but I didn't have the responsibilities of an attorney. Okay. Because the responsibility of an attorney, it never shuts off. It's a 24-hour job. nonstop, unfortunately. And it can be grueling, but it's very, very rewarding. And as a paralegal, you don't necessarily have as much of those stressors as you would as an attorney. And not to mention, there are paralegals who make really, really great money. Um, it's a really great alternative, especially for you not to have like not to pursue a higher education degree. You can make a lot of good money in paralegal, especially the further you climb up, and the longer that you work with them, you will definitely get taken care of as a paralegal. I highly recommend it if you don't want to go law school, of course.
Yeah, and I've heard other attorneys say the paralegals still make pretty good money, and they're getting off at 5 o'clock every day. They aren't going
Hmm.
to be the ones getting the calls in the middle of the night when they're trying to have to spend time with their family. So something really to look at. And I know my friend April Majors that's going to see this later over at Ridgeland High. She's a former paralegal. She will agree with you. So I know she would love to hear you say that. Now, before I get to their questions, and I've got some great questions that they've handed me here. Just talk about why there's so much diversity needed in this field. Because especially down in Miami and all over the country, if you're bilingual, you are
Hmm.
needed in the legal field. We need more women. We need more minorities. I mean, the face of our population is changing, so their legal representation in every aspect needs to change as well. So, and I'll be the first to tell you, a lot of people didn't have access to things, but just because you never saw anybody in your family do it doesn't mean you can't be the first at it and then be the best at it. So why should these kids really consider, I'd be the first one, so why should I jump right into being an attorney?
Absolutely. So, and it's great that you mentioned that. I would say, and if I'm not mistaken, there's only about 5% of attorneys that are Black in this field, right? And it's a very wide field. There's attorneys everywhere. So we are not always represented in the spaces that we want to see, and we need to be there simply because the changes that we want to see in certain spaces will not happen until we occupy those spaces. And it's important, for me, for my mentors, my mentees, it's all important that we pull each other up into these spaces because it's important. How else are we supposed to push forward diversity and inclusion in these spaces if we're not in those rooms, right? We can't expect other people to do the work for us. So we have to be the ones to set the bar for that and pull other people in. Um, I know when I was in high school, I didn't necessarily have um, anybody in my immediate family members, to look up to kind of, to kind of guide me in that direction. I maybe had extended family members, but nobody close. And I didn't even know this area in particular, music and entertainment law, was even possible for me at the time. And so that's why it's important to see it at a young age so that you know what doors are available to you before it's too late, before you maybe take a common path and, try to focus on something that's still great, obviously, but you can do better things in the legal field for sure and help push the culture forward and see more faces that represent you for sure.
Absolutely. And then again, we have a lot of first generation Americans in our district. There's always a need for immigration attorneys or just immigrant attorneys in general
Mhm.
to help bridge that language gap. So any of our kids that speak English as a second language, there's a huge place for them in the legal field.
For sure, absolutely. Um, yeah, yeah,
Well, I do have some questions here, and these are really good. So I'm gonna get to as many of these as I can. This first one
okay.
is Deani Johnson. She's in ninth grade, one of our band members here at Velma Jackson, and she asked, "What was your biggest inspiration to become an attorney?"
Hmm. My biggest inspiration, let's see. Okay, so in undergrad, like I said, I went to the University of Florida and we had a mock trial class. A mock trial class is basically you pretend you are lawyers in that class, right? You do the research, you do the writing, you do the skills. And at the end of the class, they put on an actual trial, right? They give you a side to
Oh wow.
pick, they give you an argument to pick, they give you something that you need to defend in a trial. Your professor is acting like a judge. There's actually like a trial, a courtroom on campus that they put you in, and you guys basically need to defend your position. And so I was chosen as one of the attorneys on the mock trial. And just the research, the preparation, and everything that went into that, I fell in love with. I was like, I can do this. I want to do this. And I wouldn't have known or had any knowledge of that until actually being in that classroom. So that's why it's important right now and as you go on to take classes that you're interested in so that you can get exposure to that now before you get out into the real world. Because how else are you going to know whether you like something or you don't? Even if it's a hard class, sometimes you may avoid the harder classes because, you heard people don't do well in it, but you could probably excel in it depending on what you like, right? You just never know until you try it. So I think that was my biggest motivation for doing that because I fell in love with it in that moment. I was like, this is what I want to do.
That's awesome. This is Michaela Burt. She's in 10th grade, one of our award-winning choir members here, and also one of our volleyball players. And she asked,
Nice.
how do you balance being fair and being loyal to your client?
Well, being fair and honest to your client is being loyal to them, right?
Okay.
If I don't tell them the truth about the position that they're in, if I don't keep it real with them, then I'm not being loyal to them. I don't have their best interest at heart if I don't tell them exactly how things are, right? There, there's a difference between, keeping your client happy and keeping your client out of out of the dirt, right? And sometimes, in order to keep them out of the dirt, you need to be honest with them about the situation that they're in and what they're facing. Because otherwise, you can't help them trying to, just keep them happy and keep them smiling in their faces. Yeah, so this job requires honesty, and in turn, that is the loyalty part of it.
That's awesome. This is Cambry Luckett. She's in 9th grade, and she asked, how do you keep up with law and industry trends?
That's a great question. So in my field particularly, there are several like news outlets that I follow, like music entertainment, weekly, things like that. I get emails about them. I check up on, their Instagram pages and any social media pages that they have. I'm constantly seeing them on my feed. As you know, I too am one of those people who am glued to my phone every now and then, and I kind of have to be for work.
Yeah.
So Instagram and TikTok and all of those things, they pay attention to the things that you like. If you start liking a bunch of crap, your timeline will be filled with crap. So
There
if
you
you want to be a lawyer, if you want to, be an athlete, if you want to be whatever it is that you want to be, make sure that you're tailoring your algorithms to that kind of content so that you're constantly in the loop and it's constantly you're constantly feeding yourself with the information that you want to see. So I know social media can be addicting sometimes, but if it's going to be addicting, use it to be addicting for educational stuff. Use it to be addicting for things that are going to help you in the future. Use it for educational purposes and not just, social stuff and gossip, right? I know it's easy to get caught up on the shade room sometimes, but fill it with the other stuff. I promise it's just as good and you'll be learning in the process. Mhm.
I'm so glad I say that all the time, and I couldn't agree more because, and I'm a big sports fan. I like following the athletes and seeing what they're doing, and the funny videos obviously are hilarious. But at the end of the day, there's countless amounts of content that can be useful for you. There's so many great content creators that are talking about financial issues, they're talking about legal issues, they're talking about social issues, and it's amazing how you can get positive things poured into your life, and that can give you confidence. So I could not agree more than what you just said about finding positive things online rather than just trying to be silly all the time. And I know when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, it's hard to really think that far, but just find one or two positive people to stop pouring things positive to you online, and it's amazing how you'll see things change. I got time for two more. This is Brianna Williams. She's in 10th grade, one of our basketball players here. And she asked, what is the hardest part of building the relationships that you say are so important?
That's a good question. What is the hardest part about building those relationships that are, hmm, what is the hardest part? I don't know that there is a hard part. I guess the hard part is depending on who you are, could be just getting up to even speak to those people, to be open enough and confident enough to put yourself in those rooms with people that you want to learn from.
There you
I
go.
know sometimes, you could just be scared. You could have a little social anxiety. You may feel like you don't belong there or they're not going to help you. But having the confidence to actually put yourself in those rooms, tell yourself you belong there, and then actually have a conversation with those people. I think that's probably the hardest part, because once you get past those barriers, it's kind of smooth sailing, and then after that. it could be hard, but maintaining those relationships and making them meaningful and impactful, right? When you connect with those people and you make that contact, it's important not to just continue to take from them, but also give back, whatever that may look like, right? That could be, helping them with their endeavors, right? That could be, being there for them when they need it, reaching out to them in times of need, and so forth, right? Every relationship, whether it's professional or personal, it's a give and take relationship. So that's especially important in aspects of mentorship, right? When I sought out my mentors, one of the ways that I did it was trying to bring them a client so that I can help work with them on those cases. Because they're whenever you're seeking a mentor, they get millions of students reaching out to them. I get lots of student law students in my inboxes asking me for things, and as much as I would love to talk to every single one of them, I don't have the time. So it's important to bring value to those spaces to see how you can be helpful to somebody else, and in turn they will also pour back into you. So yeah, I would say getting into the room, speaking to those people, and then maintaining the relationship, those are the hardest parts. But once you nurture those things, and it's smooth sailing.
Awesome. Well, I got one more. This is Ashton Leach. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "What are the most important skills to look for when you're choosing an attorney?"
Um, One of the most important skills, so response time. Lots of attorneys get in trouble for how quickly or how slowly they respond. If your attorney's going weeks, or days, months without speaking to you, there's an issue there, right? So pay attention to the speed at which they answer you, because, like I said, we're either fighting for somebody's money or their life. And those are two things you don't want to play with. And you want to make sure that you have somebody is responsive enough to make sure that you are prioritized and that your needs are heard. Okay. So response time is a good one. And then I mean, ask around, right? It's so in the social media world, everybody's information is all over the internet, right? There's usually not too many degrees of separation between all of us. We usually have maybe one mutual in common somewhere, right? Ask around about the person who knows them, right? Get some more information. Do your due diligence as much as you can. Look at the Google reviews. Google reviews will tell you a lot. Every now and then there will be some scragglers who'll give you a 1 star. Pay attention to those, but also have some discretion, as to who's just mad about something small, and who's really doing a good or bad job. Um, and then let's see, response times, due diligence, and hmm, I guess the personality type as well.
Yeah.
Choosing an attorney is just like choosing any other relationship, right? If you don't mesh well with that attorney, if they don't mesh well with your personality, or they don't tend to see your point of view from oftentimes, you don't have to choose them. This is a personal relationship at the end of the day, and sometimes it doesn't start and end with just the one time that you contacted them. This could be a lifelong. So make sure it's somebody that you actually like, that you
Yeah.
like speaking to, that likes speaking to you as well, and that's somebody that you can see as maybe even a friend one day, right? So
Awesome.
um, choose them as you would anybody else that you would want to keep in your life.
That's awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us out of your busy schedule. But before we go, just one thing I really wanted to hit on is that, you know, you mentioned about the relationships, and I've talked to so many people that have had a problem, and I said, well, maybe you need to talk to an attorney. And
Mhm.
they immediately put up a red flag. Well, and I'm like, just because you talk to an attorney doesn't mean somebody's going to jail. There are so many great
Correct.
attorneys like yourself that are out there to fight for people's rights, that are out there to make sure people aren't ripped off, and because unfortunately there are people that are looking to take advantage of people that don't want to talk to an attorney. So why is it so important if you have a question about something to maybe seek legal advice, even if it's just calling us and setting up a quick 1 day consultation?
Mhm. Yeah, it's super important, and usually people like to get us involved when it's too late, not realizing that they could save so much time and money contacting us beforehand, before everything is set on fire, right? Yes, consultations, depending on who you speak to, they can cost money. And sometimes they're free, right? Depending on who you ask. But sometimes that little 150 or 250 that you're going to pay in a consultation fee is going to save you a lot more than the 10,000, 20,000, $50,000 that you may spend on litigation once you've already been sued because you didn't talk to us beforehand. So I get comfortable with doing that, if you need to. Obviously, if you can do your research ahead of time, if it's on Google, I wouldn't recommend ChatGPT. Obviously, ChatGPT is a great starting point for, brainstorming, but do not take legal advice from ChatGPT. They cannot do my job, I promise you. Um, and um, so don't rely on that too much, but don't think of as an attorney that don't think of an attorney as something that is only necessary when the claws come out, right? Do it before that. Do it when you want to protect yourself. Do it when you want to get your affairs in order before you put something out. Think of us as part of your preparation, your planning, your
There you go.
your risk management, right? Think of us as that instead of, the fixers after the fact, because we could
There you
be
go.
so much more helpful to you that way than the other way.
Awesome. Well, I know you got to get back to your to all the stuff you got going on today and that amazing view behind you there in beautiful South Florida. But we thank you so much for joining us, Gigi Plantain with Delgado Entertainment Law, all the way from Miami, Florida. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I talk to you soon, buddy.
Bye bye.
See ya.